Oh, hello. In today's video, we're going to finish off our Star Wars Shatterpoint unit tier list, and we're going to be looking at the supports. Now, there's been a lot of chat out there for a little while about how supports are sort of the linchpin of most lists. They're really strong. Having the strongest supports makes you a really strong faction because they're two bodies and all the rest of it. So let's get into what I think. And of course, I'm not an expert in every faction. This is just the tier list according to me. I'm going to rehash my basic kind of thoughts about the tiers in a tier list because they are going to differ. So I think if something is in S tier, we're saying that it needs to be nerfed. It is currently too strong. It's dominated the game, and it needs to be changed. And likewise, putting something in D tier is saying that this thing is too weak. Nobody's using it ever under any circumstance. It needs to be changed. And then A tier is stuff you'll see almost all the time in sort of the relevant list with the relevant tags, the stuff that's kind of go-to for when you're playing, those kind of tags in that kind of list. B tier is stuff that, you know, if you're trying to build a Premier, let's say, and you've used up your S tiers, your A tiers, your B tier stuff you're going to look at, it's in conversation, it's okay. It's not the very strongest things available to a certain tag, but it's things in B tier they're okay. You don't hate having to use them. Things in C are generally pretty bad, but they have been rescued from D tier because maybe they have one weird trick or one niche play or something about them that means that they, you know, you're not often going to see them, but then they have odd little spaces where they turn up and do things. And as I say, this is my take. It's probably going to differ from a lot of other people's takes. We're going to start with the 501st. So the 501st are 3-point clones for the Republic, and I'm going to put them in A tier. I actually think the 501st are one of those units that you look at pretty quick when you're building a Galactic Republic list. Galactic Republic find themselves wanting 3-point supports relatively often because they've got two excellent 7 squad point primaries in Mace and Anakin, and Vader 1 as well is 7 squad points, and he is Republic, right? And also you've got Shakti, who needs to go with the 3-point support under an 8-point primary. So Republic have a lot of reason to use their 3-point supports, but I think all their 3-point supports are pretty good. The 501st in particular have they have all the things that makes clone really good. So they got defensive maneuvers, they got brothers in arms, they got 8 wounds now, and then the 501st in particular, they have their coordinated class strain, which with certain characters that have a strain early on their tree is reasonably good because it can essentially be an extra damage. And they can do a decent amount of hurt on someone if they get down their tree. They got that pin on 1, which is pretty good. They do have to get to 3 to a push. But yeah, I rate the 501st A tier. They might not stay near the top of A tier. They are right now by virtue of being the first thing. So then we're going to look at B1s. B1s. This is hard because I feel like I'm going to pop them in C while I talk because that's my gut feel and see what I think about them. So B1s have a couple of things going for them. B1s can spend no force. So their activation is always going to be free because all of their abilities are innates, right? B1s have some really unique things that can make them quite powerful. So they have 9 wounds, which is a lot for a support, for a 2-body support with 9 wounds. And they have protection on a point, and 9 wounds with protection is quite a lot of wounds, right? They have a really interesting tree. A B1 can, if it full trees, which is 5 successes, do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 damage. That's 1 attack. Now, under normal circumstances, it's never going to do that because, of course, the thing with B1s is their offensive and defensive expertise is all awful, absolutely dog water awful. But if you bring them with Riff, You know, if you do something with Rift Hampson, and they're getting those extra dice from having aquatic fellas nearby, you know, 2-3 extra dice on a B1, especially if you if you manage to have Kalani somewhere in your list as well. If you really start trying to pump up their dice, if you can get them to the end of their tree through sheer weight attack dice, then they can potentially do something. And they're also big bases standing on a point. They're pretty good with Riff as well, because with their combat AA protocols, they can guarantee getting an expose out on somebody, and then Riff Tamsin can do his blood in the water and immediately get an attack against the exposed target. So I think let's play there with the B1s. Does that mean I think that they're top of C or bottom of B? I mean, maybe B is for B1. I need to get some table time in with my Separatists, but they are. I'll leave them in C for now. But B1s are something. I'm once again B1 curious. Right, Blue Mandos. So, Blue Mandos are kind of like. We're gonna have to slot them in B to start off with. Blue Mandos, they do all the Mandalorian things, right? So they got the Mandalorians are stronger together, so they can, you know, easily get focus, and they got their sharpshooter ones that go into focus. They've got their jetpack. They've got a decent tree. They've got okay expertise. They've only got 7 wounds. I think, yeah, I think Mandos, Blue Mandos are B tier. And then Red Mandos. Red Mandos are going in C tier above the B1s, which is one of those weird things about not building your tier list in a vacuum. So I may as well talk about that here. Red Mando, if you were to just to put if your approach to a tier list was just to look at the individual cards and think nothing about the rest of the game, I think Red Mandos are actually better than Blue Mandos in a vacuum. But Red Mandos are only in that Clone Wars era, which makes them that sort of sometimes pick in weird lists when you're doing weird stuff, which puts them in C. So they're strong, but most of the things that they want to synergize with, like Armorer and the Mandalorian, Bo-Katan can play with them, but they don't have a primary that's a Mandalorian that can play with them. So you're running them under Darth Maul, and then it's like, or someone else. It doesn't really matter. And then it's like, well, why are you doing that? What's the rest of your list? Is that really the best choice? But they are strong, so they're going in C, and they might end up being the top of C because I think they bring a lot of value on their card. But for me, they're not quite it, right? So let's look at the 212. I think the 212 are B tier behind the Blue Mandos. So the 212 have coordinated 5 pin, which is pretty good. They've got all the stuff that makes clones good. They've got a defensive maneuver and brothers in arms and 8 wounds, but they are paying a squad point more for that sort of, I think, really good now base clone package. But they're paying a point more. So why are we taking them? It's because they have the potential to do 6 damage each, and they only have to get 4 successes through to get to that 6 damage. And their shooting, their ranged expertise isn't bad. They've got sharpshooter 1. If, you know, on their first activation, they're probably not going to get to use it. But by their second activation, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect, yeah, okay, I'm gonna activate, I'm gonna defensive maneuver, focus, and shoot. I think that's a reasonable play with them if you have a second activation. I don't think they're my go-to if I want 4-point clones, right? And they struggle a bit because, like I said, there's so much good stuff in Republic. Either, like I said, Anakin or Vader 1 or Mace Windu or Shakti, that it's difficult to justify having more than one. If you even have one, it's difficult to justify having more than one or even one 4-point clone support. And I don't think that they bring you that much more than you're getting from some of these 3-point supports, because for all of that sort of standard clone package, a defensive maneuver, brothers in arms, 8 wounds, it's good. You can buy that for 3 points, right? So you really look at what you get over and above that. So I think I'm happy with them in B for now. Oh, Magna Guard. How the mighty have fallen in terms of Magnas. I struggle with Magnas. So they got nerfed. They were really, really good, and then the meta kind of moved away from them a little bit, and they got nerfed, and it's like, okay. So their expertise is okay, middling. Their defensive expertise is pretty bad. Their offensive expertise is okay. They do have shoves of 1 and 2, and that's not bad, right? They, like the B1s, they have a force neutral turn, which is pretty good. If they're wounded, then they can start having to pay for their protection protocols, which is their free move up whenever a Separatist primary has to go. Magna Guards have a couple of things about them that's a little bit crippling. So if you draw them as your first draw on the first turn, you kind of have to reserve them. They don't have a gun, and they don't have any way of moving themselves. If they have to activate after, they want to activate after one of your primaries is moved, or they get to get moved by someone else. There is now more in the game that that moves stuff in Separatists. You know, they got Nossari, who can potentially move a Magna Guard, but Separatists haven't got anything that moves both, and they haven't got a gun, and they're just a little hard to use, and they often have entire games where they just kind of walk around and don't do anything. That said, when they can get in and onto a point, having 2 models that can double shove is not nothing. So I know I'm letting down the Separatist cycle. I know a lot of Separatists are like, no, Magnas are D tier. They need to get de-nerfed. I'm not totally convinced they need to get de-nerfed. I'm going to put them in C, but rather controversially, I think I'm going to put them behind the B1s. Because I genuinely, like, I've not put Separatists on the table for a while. I've been onto my Rebels at the moment, but I'm looking at the Separatist meta and the way it's evolved since the Rift box came out. And if I'm honestly, I'm not often going to be looking at lists that use either of the 3-point sports, because I don't think they're in a great place. But in general, I would now be more tempted. I think the B1s are in a better place now than the Magnas. Is that a hot take? Let me know if you think that's a hot take. But I think the B1s have got some decent synergy with Rift Hampson and the Aqua Friends that makes them have a place, and the Magnas perhaps less so. And now we're on to more separatist secondaries. We're going to go for the B2s. B2s are, they're not an A-tier unit. They can just be very expensive. They're pretty good. I like them. I'm going to put them in B. I'm going to say that they're worse than the Blue Mandos. I'm going to say that I rate them higher than the 212. I think you often want to take them. I think probably the best Separatist lists are ones that use B2s and Aquas, because I think the prevailing feeling is right. I think a lot of what makes your list really good is having good supports, and they are kind of the best of a lackluster bunch. They can work well with some things. They do get a bit expensive though sometimes, unless you're running like a Dooku CAD list or something. But I think if we're talking about Seps at the moment, we're probably thinking about, well, we got the Rift box, right? And then our question is very much what's pairing with the Rift box. And I think Rift box, and then the Grievous box is a perfectly prominent list, right? Perhaps with them leading each other's squads. There might be some play with Rift's box, but then like mixed up. So people have talked about, well, if you took Nossa with Count Dooku, then you could take B2s under Dooku. But I honestly think that's kind of a legacy. People really wanted to take B2s under Dooku for the longest time, and they're like, "Oh, I've only had a decent 3-point secondary. If only Bosk was available to Separatists, and it would be cool." But I think there's the problem with running Nossa over there with Dooku and the B2s is he's then not gonna have that much of an easy time getting near the other Aquas. And what are you running in that other squad then? Because the maths doesn't quite add up for you. Because then you're running, are you running Riff, or it doesn't matter, any of the 8-point other primaries, and then you're running a 4-point support because you're running only 3-point support in already, and then you want a 4-point secondary, but you're using your only 4-point. This is the problem with Separatists. Separatists only have one 4-point support in the B2s, right? So, like, if Separatists had another decent 4-point support, so then you're doing it where you're saying, oh well, I'm going to run Dooku with Nossa and the B2s, and then I'm going to run Rift Hampson with Kalani and B1s, and it's like cool, but you're not taking the Aqua droids, and that just seems suboptimal. So if I was after a Rift Dooku box, if I was after Rift Dooku, I'd probably, I'd be looking at Rift box plus Dooku, Dooku box, or Dooku Jango B1s, or Dooku Kraken B1s, right, at this point. So it's just hard. But building within Separatists is still kind of, you just need like 2 or 3 more boxes, guys, to give them the pieces to make decent lists. So I think the B2s are probably going to try and want to take them, because I think running B2s and Aquas together, which excludes being able to run Count Dooku, and Count Dooku is really cool. So that's the tension there. If anyone can solve that, answers on a postcard. What would you put in a Separatist list? And then we've got the Republic Commandos. So I like the Republic Commandos. I'm gonna slot the Republic Commandos in A tier. I think the Republic Commandos are better than the 3-point supports in Republic. I don't think they're better enough that you should be like, if you want to use Anakin or Vader or Shakti, you would never, I think, be like, oh well, I'll tweak this list. I'll take something worse or not what I want. I'll drop one of those things in order to upgrade my 501st to Clone Commandos. Like, I don't think it's worth that much, but I think they are a credible upgrade overall of the 3-point cost stuff. So I'll put them in A. So they got more or less the standard clone package. They've only got 7 wounds, but they've got protection, so that's better than having 8 wounds. And they've got the Brothers in Arms and the defensive maneuver. And then, like Rebel Commandos that we'll get onto, they have coordinated fire damage, right? And so if I like the 501st, because sometimes you can count that strain as a damage, well, just getting coordinated fire damage is pretty great, right? And then they have scale, and scale, it just depends on the table you're playing on how ridiculously good that is. Played a game at GriffCon where arguably there weren't enough ladders, and my opponent had Republic clone commandos, and they really, on that tabletop, did work, right? That said, my wife, who is a big Republic player, doesn't like them because they do have the one downside that's well known about them, in that they don't have any shoves, right? So whilst they can do 8 damage, right, which is impressive for a 2-body support, if they full tree, they don't have any shoves. So if you like shoves, then they're not necessarily your choice. But I kind of still think that the go-to 4-point clone option, if your list, if you're like, when I want to take Obi-Wan and Rex, because that's what my list's doing, then I think the squad is probably Obi-Wan, Rex, clone Commandos. That's kind of my view on that. Fifth brother. I'm dithering between A tier and B tier. I think fifth brother has to go in A tier. So fifth brother stocks have gone down a little bit, only in terms of, I think, the way people are playing, the way people are thinking about the overall meta of Shatterpoint as a whole. People are starting to really value. People are starting to really value two-body supports, and people are starting to be a bit like, do you wanna take a one-body support? People are starting to value that more and more. But fifth brother really is quite a package. He breaks ties on a support, which is amazing. He has 9 wounds, which is pretty good. He has protection. He has steadfast. He can expose people, although only when he's running along with other Inquisitors. He's got Dice's displacement. It's expensive, but it's there when you need it. He can jump for a force. He can do a lot. You definitely would take him if you were going all in on Inquisitors. I think I'll put him in A because I think he still turns up in other lists. So that's where I think for fifth brother. Bottom of A at the moment. Do I think he's less ubiquitous than? Yeah, I think he probably is less ubiquitous than those two other things. I think there are lots of Empire players out there that are like, you know what? I'm going to take Darks. I'm going to take Shores. I'm going to take Deaths. I'm not necessarily going to go for. If they're not running an Inquisitor build, they're not necessarily going to go for a fifth as like a drop in. But at the same time, I think. GI is a really popular primary in Empire. So I think that's where I put fifth brother. So then let's bring us on to fourth sister. Fourth sister is interesting. I'm going to slot fourth sister in on the very, very top of B tier. So fourth sister really, in a lot of ways, arguably, she is better than fifth brother. Okay, she can jump for a force, just like he can. She has force pull, which is arguably worse than well, I mean, obviously it is worse, but it's one less force compared to what fifth brother is doing, right? She has her enfeebled pin, but again, you need to be running her with other Inquisitors to really care about that. She has Inquisitorial Mandate that's just the same. She has Swift Retreat, which is the thing they gave us Sarge Ventress, where you turn a full move into a repo. She has a ranged attack, and fifth brother doesn't have a ranged attack. She has 1 less wound. It's interesting, isn't it? Which do you prefer? Which do you prefer? In some ways, I think it's going to come down to your personal taste. But for me, the protection and steadfast on fifth brother make him more of an everyman. Whereas I think fourth sister goes in. If fifth brother didn't exist, fourth sister would be an A. Because having that range is good, and she has more or less the same package. But the way I think about this is, I think if you're playing the specific list where you're like, cool, I want all the Inquisitors, and you kind of taken on board that that's going to give you the 6 body problem, right? And that's, that is what it is. Then good. But I think if you're just dipping into Inquisitors, you never want to take 2 one body. You know, if you're just dipping in and just want a cool support, taking 1 less body is one thing, taking 2 less body is another, and I think I prefer 5th to 4th. I'm only going to take 1, so that's why I put it top of B. Oh, this is a difficult one now. The Nightsister acolytes are, look, they're definitely C, aren't they? They only really fit in 1 list. You're only going to take them if you're running Dathomir as your thing. They only have 7 wounds. They're just paper bags, but then they have coordinated fire expose, right? They have coordinated fire expose. I'm going to put them above Magnus, honestly, because I think I'm just trying to think about it. If I was for some reason making a weird, janky 0 synergy list, and it was like, oh, I need a 3-point support, I have to have one of them. I think Nightsister acolytes in a random list do more than the Magnus do, and I think that Nightsister acolytes in a Dathomir list are more of an asset to that list than Magnus in a Separatist list. So I do rate them above the Magnus, but I don't think I rate them above the B1s, which seems really weird to say because they have coordinated fire exposed. We know how powerful that is. It's not nothing, but it just feels like that's really the main thing that they do, and it gives them such a target on the head that they're just going to die like a lot. They're just going to die like a lot. Yeah, let's put them in C tier. ARF Troopers. A is for ARF Trooper. A is for ARF Trooper, but I need to think about this. So I'm going to pop them in there for a minute. Obviously, ARF Troopers. Some people rate them higher than the 501st, and some people rate them lower than the 501st. I think they are still very good. Defensive maneuver, brothers in arms, 8 wounds. They only cost 3 points. Some people really make bank on the supporting fire dash. I don't think it's quite as good. The tree's not quite as exciting. Yeah, I don't know. I prefer the 501st. I know there are other people out there that prefer the ARF Troopers. They are very good, and I don't think you feel bad if you take both. It's funny. Helen always would prefer the 501st. Zimbad seems to prefer the ARFs, although doesn't really like either of them, but just has to run them in his list. I've played against both a lot, and yeah. Now, should they be above or below the Clone Commandos? I certainly think they're pretty similar. I think in terms of their power level, and the Clone Commandos impress me more. Clone Commandos are obviously a better unit, but they have a higher points cost, so it's kind of hard to compare them. But I think they impress me more. Do I think the ARF Troopers are better than Fifth Brother? Yeah, because there's 2 bodies, and they still have that really. I really rate the generic clone support, the generic clone supporting unit pack, which is the 8 wounds, the defensive maneuver, the brothers in arms. That's pain in the mouth. So we're gonna pop them there. Yeah, and we're gonna leave it there. Right, and then we come on to the bounty hunters. B is for bounty hunter, right? B is definitely for bounty hunter. Bounty hunters they're gonna have to go below the blue Mandos. I definitely want them above the 212. Where do they sit relative to the B2s? Interesting one. The bounty hunters are one of these units that kind of has a place in a lot of lists, and it's because of their payday, right? So, for example, you could take a list that was just Riff box, again, Riff Tamsin box, and CAD box, and then you could be like, cool. Well, I'm going to make Aquasing. I'm going to make Aura Sing aquatic, okay? And then my bounty hunters, they can payday into aquatic when that's useful. They can payday into Separatist when they want to, if they want to generate an aquatic dice this turn, I'll payday them into aquatic. If they want to benefit from aquatic dice this turn, I can payday them into Separatist. So they have a decent little role there that they can do. Would you take them over just taking the B2s, though, in that kind of list? I mean, they've got the added flexibility of they can sometimes be one and sometimes be the other, but it is eating your force. But there's loads of other lists. There's loads of other lists where you think, oh, is the answer bounty hunters? It might be, right? And then you've also got to consider, actually, I'm going to slide them above the B2s, because you've also got to consider bounty hunter lists, right? So if you're running something like Mando, Cad Bane, Bosk, IG, 88, IG, whichever one, secondary IG, then I think bounty hunters are like an auto pick there, right? So yeah, big fan of bounty hunters. But there's not like I don't think they're like an auto pick in a lot of places. Maybe that one, like the Mando Cad Bane list, they're not really an auto pick in a lot of places. But yeah, bounty hunters. Right, Naboo Royal Handmaidens. Coordinated fire disarm. A weird exposed flank rule where they actually have to move up to a higher ground, which seems really unfair. They've got their coordinated fire. They've got 8 wounds. They can intercede. Allied primaries and allied secondaries. Like, I'm debating between C and D, right, for the Royal Handmaidens. Their expertise is kind of bobbins, and they're only rolling 5 dice. I think they're our first D tier. They're just not doing enough for me, and you only ever really they have a place where you'd run them. Yes, you'd run them if you were running Padme's box. Does that make them C tier because they have a place? Well, ultimately not really, right? Because Padme herself we put onto the D tier. So the package is just not compelling. So we'll put them on D. If we're going to put something on D, we should sort of talk about how we would buff it. And really, I would get rid of their requirement to actually go up a level when they do their exposed flank, because no one else has that kind of constraint. There are lots of other abilities in the game where you get a climb, and then you do the climb, and then you get a benefit, and you don't actually have to have gone up on a piece of terrain. So that just seems unfair. Sharpshooter 1 and Focus isn't bad, so yeah, Sharpshooter 1 and Focus and a climb for a force, it will make them pretty good. Coordinated fire disarm is pretty good. They're pretty good, and they just need a little tweak to that, and then make the rest of their box better, Right, Stormtroopers are like they're a support with diceless displacement, which is nails, right? But nobody takes them because there are just other better choices often in Galactic Empire. I think Stormtroopers are C, but actually I think weirdly it's annoying me because probably B1s and Nightsister acolytes and Magnas would all see more play than Stormtroopers. But that's just because of other things in the storm. Galactic Empire is a massive faction, and so there's lots of things that are outcompeting the Stormtroopers. I don't think Stormtroopers are that bad. They're just on C tier, like largely because there's other things that do it better. But like it's a 2 model support with diceless displacement. It's nuts. Like, that's actually nuts. So I'll slot them into C just because they're kind of outcompeted by some other things in Empire. But yeah, should they be above B1s? I'm kind of up on B1s at the moment. I'm gonna slot them in below B1s, but that's just on the understanding that I'm not saying B1s are better than Stormtroopers, even though that's what the tier list would seem to read. I'm just saying, in the context of the actual game of Shatterpoint, I think you're more likely to encounter B1s. They bring useful things in the context of Separatists, and Stormtroopers arguably don't really bring useful things in the context of Empire, because Empire have other really quite good support. Bartu. B is for Bartu. Bartu is it's the actual placing within the tier that is hard, isn't it? Right. Bartu is, I think, really good. Has a couple of issues. Can be very force hungry. Can be very pillow fisted, but is exceptionally mobile. Is arguably the third or fourth best, and we'll see when I finish the tier list, the third or fourth best support in Rebel Alliance. And only costs 3, so fills a hole. But I don't think you're building a list and going, Bartu. I think he's definitely one that you're coming to. I'm going to slot him there. I think he's definitely one that you're coming to later on in your list building process because you're like, well, you know, it fills a hole. It doesn't do nothing. I quite like it. You know, I want to run an 8-point primary in K2SO and Bartu or something like that. And also he crops up in scoundrel lists as well because he's pretty solid for a 3-point scoundrel tank thing. So yeah, squarely in B there, I think. Ewok Hunters. I think they're D tier. I think they're D tier because they just die. I think they need a buff to their defensive expertise. Like, yeah, they've got 8 wounds, which is nice. Okay. But their expertise table for defense, like, 2 expertise is 1 block is kind of grim. They do get to start with a hunker, which is cool, and they can pay a force to hunker and dash, which is interesting. And they can get their bonus dice and things and what's it's taking them in Ewoks, and it's almost like they've been statted down because those bonuses have been taken into account, but at the same time, you can use C3PO to make actually really good things like Rebel Commandos or Pathfinders Ewoks, and you're like, why would I be taking these little fellas? They do only cost 3, but that's not because 3PO has been put down to it being a 3 cost from a 4 cost. They just don't have a natural home anymore either. So I think they need a little something just to make them a bit better and a bit more interesting. The trappers I'll put in C. Do I think I'll put them at the bottom. The trappers are pretty good insofar as they bring the Ewok trap cards, which can upset the tempo of a game. It is pretty random, so it's not something that's easy to leverage. But at the same time, I just think having the Ewok trap card is at least something. They do have the issue of there are only 7 wounds, right? And 7 wounds is sad. You hate to see it. You hate to see it. And I wouldn't be upset if they got a buff. They're probably most likely going to be bottom of C. But I quite like the trap cards that they have, right? And then they have, the other bits of kit, the strength in numbers, the stealthy approach, and the camouflage. But I quite like the tactics cards and things that they have. I think that's interesting. Okay, this is going to be a harder one because we're going to talk about the Wolfpack. And the Wolfpack are weird because all the time I've been saying, oh yes, the standard clone package, the standard clone package, the standard clone package, the standard clone package. Wolfpack don't have the standard clone package. Wolfpack have run and gun, which is that they can spend a force to get a focus and a dash rather than a hunker and a dash. And then they have coordinated fast strain in the same way as the 2/12 do. And then they have their pack hunter, which is their weird. If they're engaged in an enemy character with another clone trooper, then they get 2 bonus dice, which isn't nothing. I know that other people are really up on the Wolfpack. I think there is a group of people out there that really like Wolf and the Wolfpack. For me, they are B tier. They are clones that are not an obvious pick. They are clones that you're trying to do something weird with them. I do think that they're better than the 2/12 just because I think the 2/12, the 2/12, it's challenging actually, right? Because when am I going to take the 2/12? Well, if I want clones and I want 2 sets of 4-point clones, but how often do I want 2 sets of 4-point clones generically? Whereas I might take the Wolfpack if I'm doing something weird with them. I'm going to slot them in there. For me, I think that the clone Republic clone commandos are far and away the winners of the 4-point Republic support. I think if you want a second place Republic support, like I'm not saying you would never not take the 2/12 over the Wolfpack. I think there are lists out there if you're trying to run OB and then you're not, and then for some reason you're not running. You're running another 8-point. You're running OB, Mundi, and not Shakti. But that sounds obscene to say, right? I just think you're more likely to take either 2 3-points or a 3-point and a 4-point. So therefore, I just think you're more likely to take the others. So I'll put the Wolfpack in above those because I think if you're doing something weird, you might decide that you want the Wolfpack. If you're building a weird Premier list, you might decide you want the Wolfpack. I don't love them. I don't love them. Dark Troopers. I mean, Dark Troopers got the nerf back, but they're still good. They are only 7 wounds, but they do have protection. They are immune to pin. They can't be pushed uphill by abilities, which is sometimes going to be really, really good and sometimes not going to be that great. They can do a decent amount of damage. They've got a jump for a force. They've got coordinated fire strain, which is pretty good. I think the Darks are also going to slot into B tier. I think they're a sometimes food. I think though Dark Troopers now. I think they're going to slot in. Maybe, I don't know. I think the Dark Troopers are probably better than Lando and Bartu, but Lando and Bartu's that 3-point that slots into places. So now I'll put them there. I think the Dark Troopers are pretty good. I just think there's better things in Empire that you could be taking. I think Darks are still pretty good. They did get a nerf a little bit, but they're pretty good. The Weequay Pirates. The Weequay Pirates. The Weequay Pirates are going to go top of B or just below Fourth Sister. The Weequay Pirates and Fourth Sister have different problems. The Weequay Pirates are very good, but they're kind of they can go anywhere, but they don't super fit anywhere, right? Fourth Sister has one very particular place she fits. But the Weequay Pirates are like, yeah, we got 9 wounds. We got 9 wounds and we got steadfast. And we can climb for a force. Sorry, we can jump for a force, effectively, right? And then they got pack under. But we got 9 wounds and we got steadfast, and we got the scoundrel tag, and we fit in places, and our tree isn't appalling. So I like the weak ways. I think if I wanted a random support that didn't really synergize with anything in my list, I'd drop in the weak ways before I dropped in the blue Mandos, for example. So yeah, I'll slot them in there. That will do for me. I think they're really good. I just think it's like, what's the list where you've ended up going, and also some weak ways. If the thing is, I tend to play vaguely thematic lists. Like, it has occurred to me at the moment because I'm running a Cassian anchor to a grand tournament I'm going to soon, where the anchor squad is Cassian, Ezra, Baze, and Chirrut, and then you could run that with, if you wanted to be weird, I think Cassian and Ahsoka Tano Jedi No More make a great pairing, right? It's cross era though. So then you're trying to make an Ahsoka Tano Jedi No More squad who doesn't have any synergy. You're trying to put some things with her that are just solid and in her era. And that's when you're like, cool, you could run her with Obi-2 and Weakway Pirates and not hate it, right? They're just one of those solid things where if you don't need a particular synergy, or if you want a 4-point scoundrel, they'll do the job for you. And they're getting pushed out very often by other things with more synergy. Yeah. Yeah. I think they're really strong. Oh, IG-11. He has one body and he doesn't do enough. I think IG-11 needs a buff. Maybe he is top of D, like, because you contemplate using him for stuff, right? He's got 9 wounds. He can move. He can do weird, cool stuff with after you do the stamina combat action, it uses ability. One character in this unit make 5 dice. So he gets an extra attack. So you can get those 2 attacks. But it's the function of he's one body, and he's one body that might explode after the first time he's wounded. And I think he kind of just needs his explosion to be. If his explosion was optional, he'd see play, right? If his explosion was a choice, like it is for K2SO, he'd see play. But it's the fact that it's just this random thing where once he's been wounded, every single time your opponent gains momentum, you have to stop and see if IG-11 explodes. So by taking already one model down, and then you might very quickly end up 2 models down, which I think is a shame. So I think he's D tier, but I think he's top of D tier. Now, my real acid take that people don't like is I think Tech and Echo are D tier, right? I think Tech and Echo are D tier because they are 4 points, right? Not 3, 4, right? They don't do the generic clone like good stuff. Well, they can move and hunger for a force. Okay, that's cool. They can vaguely like remove control tokens from a chosen objective, which is fine. They get extra bonuses to their attack and defense rolls when they're hunkered, which is fine. But they're 4 squad points for 7 wound clones that don't have steadfast when they're hunkered. And I don't even think I don't actually think they're worth taking in Bad Batch. Never been impressed by anything they've done. Think they need something. They need some kind of. They need the 8th wound. If they just got the 8th wound, that might make them okay, at least in Bad Batch, right? That might make them okay, at least in Bad Batch. But at the moment, I just don't rate them. I really don't. And I realise my D tier is getting swollen, and I've only just seen who's next on the list. Arguably the king of D tier. It's Del Meeko. Is Del Meeko really going to go in the bottom of D? Del Meeko is a support. He's a one-body support with 8 wounds. He has a tactic, right? And that should make him good. He does the crosshair thing, right? Of dishing out a wound and removing all of someone's hunker tokens. Fine, right? And then he can pay a force, and he can dash, and he can focus, and he can get sharpshooter. And then he's got Deadeye, which means that he has sharpshooter too, so he can roll a shed load of dice. And he can do 2 combat actions. Like, he's got so much really good stuff on the front of his tree, the front of his card, but doesn't help him swing points. Like, he might kill somebody. If he was a secondary, weirdly, you'd take him, I think. But I think just giving up that extra body for someone that, unlike Fifth Brother, Fourth Sister, he doesn't have like the breaks ties or anything like that, and he just doesn't. He needs something. I've read his card. I'm not going to put him on the bottom. I'm going to put him there. Right. I'm going to promote him a little bit because I don't think he's that bad. There's a little bit of groupthink in saying, "Oh, never take Delmico." He's cool. He's just like he's very similar, to be honest, to IG. There, he's this one body. He doesn't do the thing where he blows himself up. Maybe he's actually the king of D tier, sure, because he doesn't do the thing where he blows himself up. But he's just in this weird situation of being this one body sport that doesn't quite do enough. Would he be broken if he broke ties? I don't know. The Imperial Special Forces are going to the bottom right here. Imperial Special Forces have infiltrate, and like I don't want to be like, oh, that's it, right? Like they're pretty good. They do some pretty good stuff. They can dash and focus and get sharpshooter. They can heal themselves. They have infiltrate. They're going in the bottom of A. I think they're a thing that you're going to reach for. The thing we're going to see with Empire is they're going to have a lot of supports in the A tier. Empire has a lot of quite good supports. But I think ISF are definitely up there. Not least, it's just infiltrates such a strong ability. It really is a strong ability. And I think it really gives ISF a place. And that's a lot of Delmico's problem as well, isn't it? Just to pop back for a minute, because if you're running ISF, you're probably not running both of them. You're probably running them, with their box mates. And then why are you going to take Delmico? Part of his problem is not his card; it's his comparison to the ISFs. So that's my take on ISF. Republic Commandos. Republic Commandos are top of A. There's an argument that they're the best support in the game. Because they're worse than Base and Chirrut, but they cost 4, Base costs 5, and it's about what you're winning and what you're losing. I think the meta as we currently stand, I think they are bang on top of A. They are the car that the Imperial Special Forces kind of wish they could be, right? Because they bring the infiltration, they bring the dash, and they've got the same sort of dash and focus action going on, right? But then also they bring coordinated fire damage because they've got the word commando in their name, which is pretty cool. And they're so they're just better, I think, than we've already talked about how good the ISF are, largely for their infiltrate. The Republic Commandos are even better again. They have kind of a better tree. They are a bit squashy, and they do have awful. It's worth saying that the Commandos there they do have awful defensive expertise. So they're not. That's probably why they're not S tier. And I do think as well they're enjoying a particularly good time at the moment under Cassian, who can when you Shatterpoint somebody, if you Shatterpoint a rebel under Cassian, then they get Impact 2 and Sharpshooter 2. So anything that is a 2-body support that can focus without having to hit the focus action that's in Rebels is automatically doing amazingly well at the moment. So I think Rebel Commandos go, for me, in the top of the A tier. Zeb. Zeb is going to go at the bottom of C. Is he going to go above or below the Ewok Trappers? He's going to go below. Zeb is only escaping D tier because I think Zeb being bad and being the other Spectre support that you can have is part of what makes Kanan balance, right? If the all Spectres, I'm just taking all Spectres lists, like if you didn't have Zeb and Hera in there that are kind of subpar, then that would just be an insane list, right? The fact that there are things in there that are Spectres that you want to swap out for non-Spectres makes the rest of that box fair and reasonable. So I can't say that Zeb needs a buff, but on the face of his card, I just don't like anything that he does. I just don't like anything that he does. I don't think he's very good. I don't think he's going to see very much play, but I don't think that they can buff him just because it would buff the things in his box and the things in the other Spectre box too much, right? And then the other end of the scale, I think we got Chopper. Now, I personally am going to put Chopper. I'm going to put him in C tier as well, and I'm going to pop him. Every time I look at it, I'm going to need to move these B1s up a little bit. There we go. Chopper is going to go there. Chopper's issue is that he only are taking him if you're running Kanan, right? And now some people don't like to take Chopper. Some people say, oh, you don't run either Zeb or Chopper. Personally, I think if you're going to run Kanan, you want at least 4 Spectres to have a decent chance of getting his revenge trigger off. Chopper is a single body support, but he does have the advantage of not being able to be shot while he's in the deck or in reserve. And he can potentially push someone off a point and do, he's rolling a decent number of, he's got an absurd number of melee attack dice. I think it's 8 that he rolls natively. So I think Chopper, he has that place. Yeah, he's rolling 8 melee dice. He has that place, but it's really just that one place. But I think, for me, he has more of a defined role and a place where you take him than much of anything else here in the C tier. ISB goes in B, not just because they have B in the name. ISB goes in B tier. It's hard. About there. ISBs are pretty okay. I don't think ever building a list and going, yeah, I'm going to take the ISB, right? They're fine. They have access to a shove on 2, which is good. They cost 3. They can make the points in your list add up, and you don't hate it, right? And so, yeah, their placement within the B tier kind of, it's a little bit irrelevant because if what you need is a 3-point Empire unit, you're not taking any of these other things, right? I think that I prefer, in the abstract, these other things to the ISBs. I think that's where they kind of sit. They are a good choice, but they're a choice you're going to take when you want to make a particular weird list where you need to take a 3-point support. I don't think you're ever excited about them, but they exist and they do some stuff that's not bad. Han and Chewie are gonna go in the bottom of A tier. So Han and Chewie are a scoundrel support, which, no, I can't do it. They've got to go in the top of B. They are a scoundrel support, which used to be something that you would try and include in a lot of lists. They've kind of had their cake eaten by Baze and Chirrut, in that, you know, they are a better 5-point support with the Scoundrel tag. Han and Chewie are more killy than Baze and Chirrut, right? They will do more damage, but they have a really depressing defensive expertise tree where you roll 3 expertise to get 1 block, and it's so unsatisfying, right? I think they are the epitome of a B tier unit. I think you're building lists and you're not thinking, oh, I definitely want to include Han and Chewie. What can I build that will let me bring them? I think you're building lists and going, you know, oh, I need something else. I've kind of got a gap. Oh, Han and Chewie. But the problem with being a B tier unit that costs 5 points is it's quite rare that you sort of happen to go, oh yeah, they're the thing. But they are going to go top of B because they are still really damaging and they have 10 wounds. I just think they've slightly fallen from the heights of A tier by virtue of I think they've fallen from the heights of A tier by virtue of other things coming along and eating their cake. Yeah, that's what I think. We're going to look at the Elite Squad. Elite Squad are super interesting, like supporting Fire Hunker, supporting Fire Heal, Tactical Advance, which is where they can move and they can focus, and they got Sharpshooter and Impact, and so they can roll. They're often rolling 9 dice, and they've got a tree, which is like, they're like the 212. They got this tree, which is super short and super easy for them to max, potentially, but they just don't super fit anywhere in a weird way, like, because of their eras. And then there are, even when you kind of accidentally think of a list where it's like, oh, well, if I run this guy and this guy, the support could be these. You're like, oh, it could, but wouldn't you rather have something else in Empire? I don't think they need a buff. I think they just need like more stuff for their era. They're going to go here, near the bottom of C. I think they probably have more play in them than Ewok Trappers or Zeb. I don't lust in my heart to buff them. I have already put too many things in D tier anyway. But like, it's a weird list if you're taking them. It's a weird list. The Bespin Security. They are a 3-point scoundrel. They have wounds and steadfast, and so that's definitely a thing. They're also going to go in C. I think there are rare lists where they will come in. I don't think they super. They're not exciting, but I don't think they super need a buff. I think 8 steadfast wounds that can, you know, do things, and you can reserve them for free and leave them on a point, and you're not that sad about it, but you're not happy about it either. And if you want a 3-point scoundrel, you'd rather take Bartu. So really, the only time you're using the Wingguard are when you've got Lando, which is why they came in Lando's box. And if you're running Lando, are you really running the Wingguard? Like, what's going on there? I think C is. I don't think they need a buff, because for their identity and what they are, the Bespin Wingguard, they shouldn't have piles of synergy with other things. They are like the best representation of what they're supposed to be. They let Lando's box be vaguely playable and work as a whole. Yeah, I think they're there. They're where they are, and they're fine about it, right? Covert Mandalorians are the best Mandalorian support. Covert Mandalorians. I mean, look, if you're running a Mando list, then you're definitely taking them. But I don't feel like with the blue Mando, I don't feel like I could put them in A tier, because it's like one list with restrictive eras. I'm gonna pop them down there. You know, if you're running the list where you're running them, you're running them, and if you're not, you're not, because their eras are kind of stupid, right? But they're pretty good. They suffer from the same problem that all Mandalorians suffer from, right, in that they have the 7 health, which is meh. But then they have a lot of other things to make up for it, and they're slightly better than Blue Mandos. I should really put them below the pirates. They're slightly better. They're just ever so slightly better than Blue Mandos, so that's where they're going to go. Snow Troopers. They're a 3-point support. They're arguably a worse 3-point support than the ISBs, but they have the Stormtrooper tag. So if you're running like Veers, you're running Veers. First of all, you're probably nothing wrong, and second of all, if you're trying to make like a Veers Krennic trooper list or something, you're taking your 3-point Stormtrooper Sergeant under Veers and taking a decent support rather than taking Stormtrooper supports. It's like, yes, they're a support with the Stormtrooper tag, and that's cool, but at the same time, the Stormtrooper tag is for lists that really want to take the best Stormtroopers they can and make them even better. So Snowtroopers just end up in this weird place where they have nothing to do and no one to do it for. For that reason, do I think the game would be improved if they were buffed? Yeah, I do. They're sad. Their little Force March tactic is so sad. They're gonna go into D tier. They're gonna go into D tier. They're gonna go there. Snowtroopers are cool in concept. Let's make them cool in like actual fact. Padawans. I believe the Padawan learners are severely underrated. I think there are lots of lists where the Padawan learners can do really well. I think the Padawan learners deserve to be in the B tier. I think the Padawan learners are gonna slot in there. People don't like Padawan learners for all kinds of reasons, because they aren't clones, they only have 7 wounds, but they can do a lot of healing, right? They can really help out if you've got, you know, other is it force users that can help them with focusing as well, right? Which is pretty cool. I think they can do stuff. I don't think they're a pick, a first pick in a lot of lists for Republic. I think they can pop up in weird places. I quite like the idea of like a Dathomirian list that's like Mother Talzin's box, and then like Darth Maul and Aura Singh, and then I take the Padawan learners like with red lightsabers in that slot. I think that's pretty cool. So I think they go there for me. Yeah, I'm happy enough with that. The Phil team. I think the Phil team are useless. What do? They got the clone package. They got steadfast and defensive maneuver, and they cost 3. And they got supporting fire heal. Woohoo! The Phil team are D tier. The Phil team are going. Oh gosh, they're going behind. Yeah, I mean, the Phil team almost had a point, right? And then they buffed Mace Windu's squad points, and it was like, hooray! They just don't have. Maybe they're better than Snowtroopers because they have that basic clone package for their 3 points, right? But there's just like here are the 2 3-point supports in A tier. Oh, a third 3-point clone support. Definitely want that. Yeah, they're pointless. Okay. I was wondering why the A tier was looking so small, and then I looked down at what we haven't listed, and it's many of the best supports in the game are just still lurking because they're relatively. I think we just had, like, if you look, because this was vaguely in release order, I think we just had a lot of really good supports that have come out really recently. Death Troopers are real good. They've got protection just all the time, not even on a objective. They've got Impact 1 just all the time. They can get a focus for a force. They do only have 7 wounds, but they have protection, so actually that's fine, isn't it? Sporting Fire Dash is interesting. Definitely an A tier. For me, I like them. I like them less than many of these things. Are they slotting in here? I think they're slotting in here. I think they're like slap in the middle of A tier. I think they're really good. It's funny though, because now we're going to look at Shore Troopers, and I think that Shore Troopers are even better. They've got a lot of similar stuff, right? But they have to be on objectives to get their protection, but they also have steadfast on objectives, and then they also have a diceless displacement. Like if I played Empire, genuinely, if I played Empire, I know that I've spent a lot of time saying I think Grand Inquisitor is amazing. I think if I played Empire, a lot of my lists would be like, here are the Shore Troopers, and here are the Death Troopers, and then what kind of other things are we going to put around them to power up the Shore Troopers and the Death Troopers? Who am I kidding? If I played Empire, my life would be trying to make, the first list I would put on a table, it wouldn't be good. The first list I would put on a table would be Via's Stormtrooper Sergeant Shore Troopers, right, with Krennic, Death Trooper Specialist, and the Death Troopers, because I think my life might just be. I think if I was going to play Empire, the big draw for me is not guys with lightsabers. The big draw for me is look at these amazing troopers. Let's power up all the troopers to their best of the ability that we have for them, and have guys that move troopers and buff troopers. And you probably want Death Trooper Escort, player point down, sure, maybe, but yeah, I just think it's the masked goon troopery list that I think we got. I don't think it's amazing, but I do just look at Shore Troopers and I go, wow, they're wicked cool. I love strong supports. I think we've all got a decent helping of strong supports, right? Pathfinders. Pathfinders are not awful. Pathfinders are going to go into the... Are they B or are they C? I think they're B, just because they can work in a variety of lists. Do I think they're better than B2s? Yes. There. I think Pathfinders are you don't see them very much because Rebel Commandos cost the same and are ridiculously good. And then, maybe you want to take a 3 cost, so you take Bartu. Maybe you're taking Kanan, so you take Chopper. Maybe you're taking Baze and Churrit in every single list. We'll talk about them in a minute. They just kind of get pushed out a little bit by other things, but I don't think they're bad. They are pretty good at punching, and they are ridiculously mobile, right? And then they have absurd synergy with Bodhi Rook as well. Pathfinder's Bodhi Rook together is a pretty fun little brick. Granted, that only really is useful if you're running them under Luke Skywalker, because he's a 7. I think it's kind of the go-to squad if Jedi Knight Luke is what you want to run. No, I like them a lot. I think they are underrated for what they are, because you almost never see them, and people go, "Oh, they're rubbish." I don't think they are rubbish. I just think they're worse than Republic Commandos, and that pushes them out of their meta. But I think that pushes them into B tier. So yeah, Baze and Churrit are probably an S tier. And I say probably. I am not 100% convinced they need a nerf. Maybe it is Cassian that needs a nerf. But I think the collection of writing that is Cassian and Baze and Churrit together on their 2 cards needs a nerf. Now, I was talking to Zimbad about this, and he's like, well, what you do is you say that Cassian's identity, where when you Shatterpoint somebody, they get Impact 2 and Sharpshooter 2. You just make that primaries and secondaries only, right? And then it's like, that's really interesting because Cassian's ability is still really good. You just might see it on a Charming Lair or a Callus, rather than a just every single time when I'm playing Cassian and Baze and Churret, it's like, do I like? Is it ridiculously suboptimal that I Shatterpoint Baze and Churret right now? Because I mean, the Commandos can actually put out more damage, but it's just that Baze and Churret are also giving you the Force Refresh. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, their Force Refresh isn't that much of a big deal because they're effectively Force neutral because you're going to need to spend that Force. And it's like, not necessarily, though, because their Force ability that they pay for is movement, right? And I don't know, maybe I just play Shatterpoint weird compared to other people, but certainly when me and Zimbab play, and granted, I don't play a lot of games on first contact, but a lot of the time, especially when it's a Shatterpoint, hey, I activated them, I spent some force to get an extra movement, and I moved them. And now they're in the middle skirmishing around on objectives, right? And so I'm Shatterpointing them, and they're either going, right, and then they're in the mid-board, and they're waking up, and quite often, actually, Baze and Churret, after their first activation, I've often wanted to keep them in their steadfast side, and quite a lot of the time I'll Shatterpoint them and go, cool, I focus for an action and then I attack, and then you just go, cool, that's 2 10-dice melee attacks, thanks. Yeah, like, and then 1 or 2 force refresh, depending on how wounded they are, which can then be used by somebody else, right? So I don't think it's like, yes, they can be force neutral, because obviously they'd be wounded, it's 2 force to do their move, and sometimes you will need to move them because the struggle has flipped or whatever it is, but not always. You're often going to get a second activation, it's be like, cool, they're on their point, they're in their mid-board, they might have been wounded, they might not have been wounded, but they've probably got someone they can punch now because they're standing on objectives. But like I say, they are S, but they are extremely strong. If they weren't S, they would be. If it wasn't for Cassian, if Cassian didn't exist, if we had Baze and Churret's card and not Cassian's card, I think Baze and Churret would be A tier, and it would be debatable, I think, between them and Rebel Commandos who was top of A, because Baze and Churret are better, but they cost 1 more and harder to fit in places. And of course, Cassian brings the 9 squad points as well. So I think if Cassian wasn't there, they would be A tier and not even top of A tier, right? So maybe it's Cassian that needs the nerf. On the other hand, building a list for the Rebel Alliance at the moment is like, cool, here's Cassian and Baze and Churret. Now, what else am I going to put in my list, right? So I think they deserve their S tier slot, but it's not totally straightforward. Now we've got other 5-point supports. Now I need to think quite carefully about Sev and Scorch. Sev and Scorch are really very good, right? They're 8 wounds, they have protection and steadfast on an objective, and they have a tactic dash on a support, so it's always free. They have a way to do damage without doing a wound, which circumvents a lot of revenge triggers, and they have a really decent amount of damage on their card, and crucially, they have a crit to a normal on 1 expertise. They are very good. They are very good. I'm not gonna say they need nerfing. I think maybe they're gonna end up needing to apply a nerf to the boss package as a whole. I think is gonna need a nerf. But I think I'm gonna slide them in below Rebel Commandos there on A tier for the time being. They are extraordinarily good. They are the best clone support. They do cost 5, which is a thing that they do, right? But they are extremely tanky, hard to shift, and I think they are very good. Aqua droids. Aqua droids are still A tier. They are A tier. They do a lot. They bring a lot. They bring that aqua tag, which is synergizing with a lot of things. I think they are sort of mid A tier here, where like I think if you're building a separatist list at the moment and you're not including aqua droids, you need to take a big hard look in the mirror, because separatist's biggest problem is like look where their supports are on this support tier list, right? Half of them are in the C tier. That's a problem, okay? One of them is in the A tier. 0 of them are in the S tier. One of them is quite near the bottom of B tier, hanging out with the ISB and Padawan learners. So I think that I think that aqua droids are an auto take for separatists at the moment, and they're 5, and that's annoying, and so they're certainly not S. And I think that they are less of a thing that you are immediately reaching for, the things that are above them, but I think they're in the right spot, right? And I think that they are good. They are a good unit. A lot of people are annoyed by them because they're not as good as Baze and Chirrut. They're not as good as Republic Commandos. They're not as good as Seven Scorch. Rebel Commandos. Now, it's controversial because I know a lot of people would say, and they're not as good as Han and Chewie, and I've rated them higher than Han and Chewie. I understand that I'm weirdly down on Han and Chewie compared to most people. I have played with Han and Chewie a lot. They are just so glass cannony. They just cannot be relied upon to live on a point, and you think they can because they have 10 wounds. And I think, honestly, and maybe this is a hot take, I think one of the reasons that people have historically rated Han and Chewie really, really highly is because they've played games where people have gone, how many wounds do they have? 10? Oh, I won't bother attacking them. I'll do something else. That's absurd. 10 wounds on a support. And they haven't actually looked at the whole card and gone, oh no, this expertise, 3 expertise is 1 block. Good grief. Right. You won't one-shot them often with 10 wounds, but you will get them down. You will get rid of them. They do die an awful lot. I think that's where they go. So I think that's my tier list. Obviously, this is just my take. I'm not a very accomplished player of Shatterpoint, right? My biggest claim to fame is placing 7th in the Griffcon GT, which was a very small by the grand scheme of things, GT, right, with less than 20 players. But this is what I think. And if you don't agree, that's fantastic, because it means you can write some comments in the comment section down below, and we can have lots to talk about, which would be amazing. And I'd love to have it patiently explain to you why I'm wrong, especially if you're someone who has a bit more experience. Empire is a bit of a blind spot to me. Talk about Empire a lot, play into them relatively few times, and some of these other things. Honestly, a lot of the things are in D tier I've never played against, because when people think something is bad, why would they play it into you, right? So it's based on reading the cards rather than on considering carefully the first-hand experiences. But that's my tier list. That brings us to the end of the Shatterpoint tier list series. We've done 3 videos now. Hope that you've enjoyed them. Yeah, let me know. I've got more videos planned, more videos for Shatterpoint, and at some point I will do some Kill Team videos. I was talking to someone at my channel today, and they likened making Kill Team videos to eating your vegetables, and it does feel that way a little bit at this point. I'll bury that remark at the end of this very long Shatterpoint ramble, because then none of the Kill Teams will find it. but they are going to happen as well. But there will definitely be more Shatterpoint content as well, not least tournament reports from the 2 GTs that I'm going to, and probably some more list building thoughts. I didn't even need that video today actually, but I decided to finish this series first. Some more list building thoughts about what I plan to take to the Element Games GT, which I've talked about a bit already. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. I'm rambling now. Please do like, subscribe, comment, do all the things, especially if you're a and link this around to your fellow Shatterpoint enjoying people, even if it's to say, oh gosh, this is rubbish, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Link this around to your fellow Shatterpoint enjoying people, because I'd love to get a greater influx of Shatterpointers into the Tabletop Impulse community. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.